The night air felt cool, like the gentle California breeze I'd grown used to, refreshing, with just enough of a chill to make the evening comfortable. Inside, I could hear the laughter of my family and the rhythmic beats of music filling the house. They were celebrating my high school graduation, my big day. But as I sat there with my father on the back porch, the distance between me and the joy inside felt immeasurable. It wasn't that I wasn't happy. I was. But something in the air was off. The night felt heavy, like it was holding a secret, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My father was always a quiet man, someone who didn't talk much about the past. Over the years, all I knew about his childhood was that it had been in the Appalachian Mountains, and we still had family there, though none of us had ever been. He wasn't the type to share much. His silence had always been a presence, a comfort, something that shielded me from whatever else lay buried beneath. But tonight was different. Tonight, my father had finally let his guard down. A drink was in his hand, and the weight of years seemed to be settling in his posture. As the shadows stretched out across the yard, he turned to me, his face unreadable, as though he were searching for the right words. "Son," he said, his voice low, almost steady. "There's something I've never told you about my childhood. I think it's time you knew." My heart skipped a beat. I leaned forward, curiosity piqued. What could be so important that he'd wait until now to tell me? "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He took a long breath and stared off into the dark distance, as though the words he was about to say had been waiting for years to leave his lips. "They call them the faceless," he said, his words hanging in the air like an omen. "If you've ever caught a glimpse of someone out of the corner of your eye but couldn't see their face, it was them. They exist among us, some every day, and they're dangerous." I felt a chill run down my spine. Dangerous? The word sounded wrong in my father's mouth. "What do you mean, dangerous?" I asked, my voice a whisper now. His eyes locked onto mine, the weight of his gaze like a wall. "They live deep in the woods where I grew up. They wear tattered, dark robes, and where their faces should be, there's only smooth, white skin. Their eyes and mouths are as black as night. You'll hear their voices first, soft, sweet songs, drifting through the trees, tempting you to follow. But once you lock eyes with them, it's over." "Over?" I repeated, unsure if I'd heard him right. "Yeah, staring into their eyes is how they steal your face. Once they take it, you're one of them. You become just another faceless figure, wandering the woods, playing their games, searching for revenge to be free again." I felt my breath catch in my throat. This didn't feel real. The air around me grew colder, even though the breeze had picked up, and the sounds of the party inside seemed to fade into the distance. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid of what I might hear. His hands trembled slightly as he took another deep breath. "The night before my graduation, many years ago, I was with my two best friends. We decided to sneak into the woods to drink, to escape the prying eyes of the town. We wanted freedom. We thought we could do whatever we wanted. As the night wore on, we started hearing it, this beautiful, haunting music, drifting on the wind, coming from somewhere deep in the woods." "What did you do?" I asked, leaning in, feeling the gravity of his story pressing down on me. "We followed the sound," he said, his voice thick with regret. "And that's when we saw them, the faceless. They were there, children, dancing between the trees under the moonlight. At first, they just looked like kids, like any other kids, but there was something wrong about them, something unsettling. I'd heard the stories, though. My mother used to tell me the warning when I was younger. She always told me never to look, never to open my eyes if I saw them. I remembered that as I stood there, watching." His voice broke for a moment, and I could see his hands were shaking now, the tremor barely noticeable but undeniable. He paused, as if the memory was too much to bear. I closed my eyes tight. I knew what would happen if I looked, but I could hear my friends laughing at first, and then they were screaming. I felt cold hands grip my shoulders and panic flooded my chest. I knew what it was, what they wanted, but all I could think was, don't look, don't open your eyes. I ran, blindly, stumbling through the dark. My mind was racing, trying to process what he was saying. My father had never shared anything like this with me before. His eyes were distant, haunted by the memory of that night. "How did you make it out?" I asked, feeling a sense of dread starting to settle over me. He didn't meet my gaze right away. I kept running. I fell. I tripped, but I never looked back. I didn't look for my friends. They were never found. The next day, after graduation, I moved to California. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I could leave all of that behind. I sat in stunned silence. My father had always seemed so strong, so controlled, but hearing this terror from his past, it shook me to my core. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He turned to look at me then, and in his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before, a mix of sorrow, fear, and something else. Something darker. "The reason I'm telling you this now, son, is because the boy who graduated in front of you and the one behind you, they had the faces of my friends." The world around me seemed to pause. The sounds of laughter, of celebration, faded into nothingness. The only thing I could hear now was the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. My breath caught as I turned my gaze toward the trees in the backyard, the night stretching out before me. I could feel something out there, lurking just beyond the shadows. "They've come for you," my father whispered, his voice shaking. "They wanted me to join them all those years ago, and now, they've come for you." My stomach twisted in knots. I could hear it now, faintly at first, the soft, sweet song drifting through the trees, calling, beckoning. My feet felt like they were rooted to the ground, yet the pull to go toward it was overwhelming. "Dad," I whispered, my voice shaking with fear. "What do we do?" He set his drink down, his eyes wide with urgency. "We don't look back, son. Not for anything." The night air was heavy now, oppressive, as the distant echoes of laughter twisted into something darker, more sinister. The faceless figures were out there, hidden in the woods, their eyes black as night, waiting for their next victim, and I could feel them drawing closer. I took one last glance into the dark, feeling the pull of the woods, the promise of play, the lure of the faceless ones whispering secrets that could not be ignored. But I remembered my father's warning. We didn't look back.